Hello, I would like to talk about We Want to Do More Than Survive, an abolitionist teaching and the pursuit of educational freedom by Bettina L. Love. So I first want to talk about Bettina L. Love and just how awesome she is. She has a PhD and she is currently the Athletic Association Endowed Professor at the University of Georgia. She co-founded the Abolitionist Teacher Network, or ATN, with a mission to develop and support teachers and parents to fight injustice within their schools and communities. So she is very passionate about this issue, and that book reflects that. Specifically, she shares her narrative of being a Black LGBT girl and her experience in school, where she was told repeatedly that she was not college material, which she, of course, proved them wrong, and went on to write this book and become very successful in her career. But she wanted to talk specifically about how children of color in education are often viewed and treated by the system. To quote her, the educational survival complex are when students are left learning to merely survive, learning how schools mimic the world that they live in, thus making schools a training site for a life of exhaustion. This just means that educators teach students how to take a test, create acronyms, and character education. I'm sure we've all seen this happen before or have had experiences with this. It's just a checklist to survive your education. And another quote that I found very powerful was racism robs dark people of their humanity and dignity and leaves personal, psychological, and spiritual injuries. Racism literally murders your spirit. Specifically, I want to look at how teachers hurt this system and what teachers can do to fight against this oppression that people of color, students of color, as she refers to dark skinned students, feel in education. When school is seen as a way for children to learn to survive in the world, it becomes a place where safety, creativity, and freedom is nowhere to be found. Educators often teach dark students that they need to toughen up, get some grit, and pull themselves up by their bootstraps because educators want to help people of color to try and understand the world around them. And so it's like, well, you just got to toughen up because it's a tough world out there for you. But we don't talk about why it's a tough world or are better at preparing students for the real world. They don't offer the empathy or support to students of color as compared to their white peers. So, a big portion of her book talks about intersectionality, which the definition is here the interconnected nature of social characterizations such as race, class, and gender as they apply to a given individual or group, regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. So, intersectionality at its core is just seeing a person for their whole person and being aware that there are different aspects of them that we may not all see at the same time. For example, I am a white married woman, and all three of those titles refer to me, although you may only see one or two of those aspects when interacting with me on a professional level or a personal level or what have you, but all three of those still make up who I am and how I perceive the world. So we must understand those nuances and individuality when it comes to students of color. And it's to be noted that some categories bring different challenges. For example, race brings its own sort of racism and stereotypes with it, as well as looking at a student's sexuality and their struggle with being true to who they are versus what culture may think of them, and as well as socioeconomics, that they may not have the means to provide for themselves. But all of these things come with their own sort of advantages and disadvantages, but we must see them all to be serving our students well. So, what is this abolitionist teaching that Dr. Love talks so much about? The actions of a teacher that strives to create an environment that not only shows kids how to survive, but to thrive. It's the desire to care deeply for all of humanity that educators put their lives, careers, and families at stake, just like abolitionists in past history. And this looks different in every classroom, every school, every teacher, every district. But I want to give some examples of how we can do that, or some examples that I've seen. So, one way we can do this is by creating a welcoming classroom. So, this is just looking at the physical room that you are in, the physical space that you are in with your students. The school environment should be one of colors and creativity and knowledge, and the classroom in which students learn should reflect that and show representation. So this could be showing underrepresented groups in your posters. For example, showing a poster of US presidents, which have primarily been white males, next to female cabinet members or people of color in Congress. You do not want to exemplify common roles of different races, such as instead of placing an image of a Native American warrior on your wall, you can place an image of a Native American scientist. And you should also advocate for better lighting or acoustics in your room and make small improvements such as sound buffering if you are able. So this could be adding foam to your classroom. This could be adding different sort of like window panes so that your fluorescent lights don't come across as bright or harsh, because all of these lead to a safe and welcoming environment, as well as having an open space for your classroom. So looking at ourselves personally, you can be a welcoming teacher by assigning seats on the first day so students do not feel left out. You want to share your own story when you're in the classroom, as well as emphasizing what students can do, such as saying that, oh, you can bring a water bottle to class, instead of saying, well, you cannot drink pop or you can't drink orange juice. And then you also want to provide students the tools they need if it's possible. So having a pencil bin out for students to grab if they need a pencil, and not berating a student in front of the class if they do not have one. You could also identify stress in your life and manage it as best as you can. By being aware of stress and other aspects of your life, you can be more engaged with your classroom. And you also want to connect to students' culture. You want to create diverse scenarios that students may understand a concept. For example, in a science classroom, you may talk about urban farming as well as rural farming, or other such ideas. You also want to make sure that when having a discussion about race, you do not have people of color speak for their entire race. Instead, you want to teach on the injustices and then lead discussions for students to openly ask questions and lead to further exploration. So, how do we become an abolitionist teacher specifically? This is another quote from Dr. Love. She says that theory does not solve issues. Only action and solidarity can do that. But theory gives you language to fight, knowledge to stand on, and a humbling reality of what intersection social justice is up against. So, the first point is just to educate yourself. I encourage you to attend seminars, watch TED Talks on YouTube on your own, read books, textbooks, novels, and immerse yourself in the culture of people of color and the United States. You also can take courses in your continuing education on racial justice, as well as other marginalized groups such as the LGBT plus community, or just engage yourself. By taking action as an abolitionist teacher, that is the point of being an abolitionist, that is the definition. This can look different, but includes knowing how to talk about racism and other social issues with your students, such as homophobia. This looks like calling out colleagues when microaggressions or other slurs are made or used. This is protesting and boycotting policies that promote disenfranchised learning. And more, the most important thing is not waiting for a leader to come along, but becoming the leader that you want to see fight against these oppressions. Thank you for your time.